Good morning and welcome to Sunday Soul Day. Today we have a very special guest who I can't wait for you guys to meet, Pedro M Frias. He is an accomplished author, entrepreneur, content creator, a podcaster, and marketing expert with a passion for financial literacy and technology. Pedro is the author of two notable books, Broke Broken, What College Doesn't Teach You About Money, and Owning Change, Claudia Can Too, which is a captivating children's book that imparts the importance of ownership and financial understanding to young minds. With an impressive career, Pedro has held prominent roles with tech giants like Google, Techstars Venture Fund, and Hustle. He's played a pivotal role in scaling companies from their early stages to Series B before embarking on his own entrepreneurial journey with the founding of his own startup. Throughout his career, Pedro has been instrumental in driving growth for brands and companies through his expertise in sales and marketing and business development. With over a decade of experience in the advertising and technology sector, Pedro brings a wealth of knowledge and strategic insights to his clients. In addition to his success in the business world, if that wasn't enough, Pedro shines as a dynamic host of the Pedro Frias Show podcast. On his weekly show, listeners gain access to wisdom and experience of peak performers from all walks of life as they share their journeys, knowledge, and thought leadership. He is a force to be reckoned with in the worlds of finance, technology, marketing, and podcasting. His unwavering commitment to financial literacy and his insatiable appetite for growth and innovation continue to make a lasting impact. Please welcome my friend, Pedro M. Frias.
Morning, and thanks for having me on. I'm honored to be here bright and early with both of you. I'm very excited for the show.
Yeah, so are we. Well, we heard your intro, but I thought we'd take it back a little bit and talk about your earlier life. Where did you grow up?
So this is going to surprise a lot of people now because most people, when they meet me today, they would not guess I was born and raised from in the East Coast. So I'm from Boston originally, and I lost a lot of my accent. So back in the day, before I moved out here to California, I've been in California 7 years now. But before, I used to have an accent, and I'm from a city called Worcester, and they pronounce it Worcester. So when I first came out here, I would talk like that. But anyway, yeah, so I'm from Boston, born and raised. My family is from the Dominican Republic, and they immigrated when I was really young. And I grew up, similar to everybody else. East Coast, fast-paced hustle. I was a terrible student growing up. So I flunked out of college 3 to 4 times. When we were talking offline about ADHD, but I also am very fast-paced, so my brain works very quickly. So when I would sit in class and in school, I would be there physically, but my mind would be somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
And that leads me to college, because I was a C minus B plus student. And when I went to college, I'd be sitting in class, my mind would be somewhere else. I would be, partying on the weekends, and eventually that led me to get kicked out of 4 schools. And during that time, I went to one school in Tennessee called Southern Adventist University. And when I was there, I met my friend called Ruben. And Ruben and I have been best friends for a pretty decent amount of time. And when I was there, we started a club promotion company where we were throwing parties for celebrities. So we would go to Atlanta, we would go to Jermaine Dupri's club, and we would bring everybody from the campus to the club. And that's how I got started in entrepreneurship. And it taught me a lot. That was back in the day. I'm 35 now. MySpace was the thing during that time. So I built up a pretty decent community on MySpace. And that experience was the foundational experience for me to learn about not only entrepreneurship, but the mindset it takes to learn, evolve, and grow. And I took that. And something else I should say too, it was the first time I saw Black and brown people who were like in positions of power.
Mm-hmm.
So I saw that they were just hustlers, business people. If you were in New York or Boston, a lot of the professionals, they tend to be white folks. And not that it's necessarily a bad thing, but when you're growing up and you're like Dominican or Puerto Rican or Black, you don't see a lot of these leaders running organizations other than my uncle and the business people I met in Atlanta. So that experience was transformative for me. To make a long story short, I went to Wall Street. I worked at 2 financial firms. I brought on a client while I was at Wall Street, and he was a tech founder. And he kept telling me, Pedro, you're a hustler. You're on the wrong side of the table, man. And I was like, what do you mean? And he was like, you need to get out of that old people game of technology. I mean, of finance and move into technology, start your own business. Next, you know, I'm on a plane, moved to San Francisco, and here I am.
Oh my goodness. That's quite a journey. Like going from Boston, Atlanta, like, flunking out of school. I too am like you, my brain works really fast. And I would sometimes be very present in class, but like reading a different book while I was sitting in class, or like my mind would be, drifting off. So that completely resonates with me. But going back to your first kind of breakthrough in the entrepreneur world, like starting your own kind of company with your friend Ruben, which, by the way, Ruben is a small inspiration for the show, because he has a quote that he said a while back, where it's success on Monday starts on Sunday. And so that quote kind of stuck with me when I was developing the show. But tell me about a memorable event that you planned during that time, because I know you were working with like athletes and artists. Like Jermaine Dupri was huge back then, so still is. He's like amazing. So tell me about that.
Yeah, great question. There was a lot of celebrities around that time. I'll say this story that was kind of different than probably what most people would expect. Kim Kardashian during that time was starting to take off a little bit. And there was a club called Club Pure, and we threw a party with Floyd Mayweather and Kim Kardashian. Now, we didn't know them personally, but we were helping the owners with their promoting and bringing people to the event. And it was the first time that I got to see up close just like the power of having an online brand and a presence, because the club was just packed out and the demand was there, the radio, the professionalism, and it taught me a lot. A lot of those skill sets I use today with my brands.
Oh my gosh, that's insane, by the way. Like I mean, Floyd is, by the way, one of my favorite boxers, but um, that I couldn't even imagine the level of confidence that went into, being around folks like that, like celebrities, bumping elbows with them. And you're an athlete yourself. I've seen you play some golf. Like, tell me a little bit about that. Like, when did you get started in golf? Because that's another thing. Like, you don't see a lot of black and brown folks like back in the day playing golf.
You definitely don't. Yeah, I've been playing golf for 10 years and I learned it from my uncle. So my uncle was my mentor before he passed away. And he was a business dude and he would take me, golfing on golf meetings. I used to hear him in meetings and I'd be like, how the hell does this bro talk like that? And because he was, he was just so good in front of people. And I learned it was a great business tool, but it's also a good game to decompress. So I stay active, as far as mental health, the gym, boxing, golf, and spending on time in nature is what helps me decompress. And I also get great ideas from there. So a lot of the inspirations, like the books and the podcast and even companies that I've started, has come from on the golf course, in nature, in Tahoe, like where I go pretty much every other week now. And I get all my ideas from being active outside in nature and on the golf course.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that. Did you play any other sports?
Play basketball. My family, they are all athletes. They're all like 6 feet plus. I got, I'm 6 feet, so I got the short end of the stick. But yeah, I played a lot of basketball.
Nice. Nice.
I
Allie and
think
I are both athletes too. So
yeah, I played college water polo, and then Demisha, you were a track star in college.
That's right. You were a track star, right? That's right. You got a scholarship because
Yep.
of that.
Yep, to UCLA.
I was a late bloomer. I was skinny growing up, and I started and working out. And even though I did play, but I was okay at ball. But it was after I hit 20s when I really started putting on weight, and then it switched from just playing to play to actually being like a mindset, performance, and making sure I can bring my A game 24/7.
Wow. Yeah. Wow, that's incredible. So you have had quite a career transition. I want to know a little more about what prompted you to shift from organizing celebrity events to entering the field of finance.
Oh, great question. Growing up, I would go to downtown Boston or New York. And during that time, social media wasn't that big. And all I knew is I wanted to get out of the situation I was in. And club promoting was a way to do it. But also when I would see successful people during that time and people I looked up to, they were all on Wall Street. They were traders, they were investment bankers, they'd be wearing the nice suits. Now whenever I go back to the East Coast, people look at me and they're like, what the hell happened to you, man? You have a beard now, you look funny. But during that time, finance was a way to leave the scenario I was in. I'm Dominican from, certain neighborhoods, and really there was not a lot of ways out. And financially, that was a great way to do it. I also was decent with numbers, and I liked dressing up in a suit. I liked working with people. So the transition was actually pretty natural for me. Something else too is I had my uncle. My uncle was a mentor of mine, and he was a stockbroker for a while before he became CEO of a company. And he was telling me that that was a good area for me to look into.
Yeah, it's incredible how we can take our skills and build from them, and in order to pivot. That's so fascinating what you've done. Can you tell me a little more about your book, Broken, What College Doesn't Teach You About Money? And what prompted you to write this and how it addresses financial literacy?
Oh, great question. So taking a step back for me, something I'll share in the show, and I've shared it a few times, I actually shared it in my book, is that I wrote it basically for me, because during the time when I was in college, I took out student loans, just like a lot of young people, I'm sure, that listen to the show. I took out tons of student loans, and I didn't read through every little detail of them. I mean, to make a long story short, I ended up defaulting on $20,000 worth of student loans, and I got sued for it. And I took a semester off in between college, and they kicked it into deferment, out of deferment into repayment. I didn't know. And the payments I couldn't make because I was broke and trying to figure my situation out. So long story short, I defaulted, and I started to learn and understand, and also from talking to people in the community, that financial literacy is a massive problem. We have bad credit scores. We don't understand investing long term. We don't understand long-term wealth building like they do in financial services or Wall Street, or even people from different communities. When you have your parents at home who take you from young and show you how to play a different game, it can change your life, and it can change the careers you go after. It can change how you budget your money. And those skill sets that I learned on Wall Street, I wanted to take and bring it to the people. So going back to nature, I was actually on a trip to Carmel. And by the way, I love Pismo Beach. I know we were talking about Pismo before. Pismo is great. But I was actually in Carmel, and I was mentoring these kids from, there's a town, Hollister. It's on the way. Hollister or Holliston? I think it's Holliston. Hollister, yeah, just like the clothing brand. But in these kids, and I would see just how much they would hustle and wanted to leave their situation. And when you're starting off, you just focus on money, and then you switch to passion, and then you switch to wanting to contribute and help people, just like you're doing on your podcast. And I was actually in Carmel. I was on a hike, and I had this vision that kind of hit me. And it was like, okay, how can I give back to people? Because I can't do everything. I can't do technology. I can't do media. And I was playing in a lot of different lanes. I'm like, what's a way to give back? And then I decided to write the book. And the book is essentially a story of somebody, an immigrant, who walked into a wealth management office, similar to, like these dudes who sell companies. And let's just say you have a few $1,000,000 or whatever. Let's just say you have whatever you have. You go into an office, and you sit down with the financial planner, and they take you step by step through the investment process. And that's the outline from the book.
Yeah, that is so incredible. I have so many clients who one of their big stressors is money. And what we will break it down to is their relationship with money, and the shame that goes along with even exploring and discussing your finances. We talk about how, people who are in Debtors Anonymous, they have what we call financial vagueness. So I think it is absolutely essential that we have places people can go to, such as your book, financial planners, to help sort some of those things out, because there is real shame behind it.
Oh yeah, I was ashamed for a long. I had a 520 credit score all the way till I was 23, and I would go get apartments, and I'd be embarrassed to apply for them. Like a lot of people now, we're scared to open up our bank accounts and be like, "Ooh, maybe spent too much this weekend going out partying with the boys." So there's a lot of shame, and it also brings a lot of stress within relationships. If you look at the stats in divorce, most divorces are triggered by money and having hard conversations about money. And for a long time, it was one of those things you really didn't talk about that much.
Yeah, it's so true. And I think it's the one thing that school systems get completely wrong. I think like it should be taught really early, in the schools, like in so many other things from healthcare and 401ks, like everything should be taught early on because a lot of times people are struggling with this. I think now there's so much more like your book, like things that are accessible to people. But back in the day, like it wasn't so accessible, and it was really hard.
Oh yeah, yeah. Back in the day, before YouTube, Instagram, Google, in the very beginning, you had to read these long books.
Yep.
And if you didn't have anybody telling you what books to look to, you kind of just figured it out on your own.
Yep.
And the contracts and just the financial game, it's made for people in the know. And if you look at most of America, even outside of Black and brown communities, most people don't really like finance because it's boring and there's a lot of stuff to read through. Then also they make it so complex that it's difficult to understand.
Yeah, absolutely. I had to change my relationship, to Allie's point, with money, because I was always like, I don't really. I grew up around wealth, and I saw the good of it, and also the not so good, and the excess, and so in the control, there's a lot of control and power that comes along with that. So I think growing up, I was always like, I don't care about money. I don't. But now I very much care. So
Yeah, it's important now, even within dating, what we see online that, money is an important factor, especially for men. And it was one of those things that for a while people were sort of scared to talk to. And, I think it's easy for a lot of us just to focus on making money versus passion. And there is that kind of like dichotomy, right? Where you need to make money, you need to pay your bills, you need to take care of your family, but then there's the passion component too. But it's one of those things. It's tough. I feel bad for young people today. Because I think with social media and tying it back to mental health, there's a lot of pressure for young kids today to make money fast.
Yep.
And it's can be stressful when you go on Instagram and, if you're like in high school or college and you see people just living these lifestyles and you look at your lifestyle and then the comparison thing starts to kick in and it can be a stressful thing.
So spot on. That is so spot on. Well, you have a second book, and I know you're working on a third, but you have a children's book. What sparked you to write a children's book on finance? And by the way, I love your children's book. I got it for my kids last year, and I don't even think I told you this offline, but I'll say it publicly. It's a large reason why it kind of sparked my entrepreneur journey with my kids.
Wow.
And it really opened up an opportunity just to talk about it in our household. And my kids are 5, my daughter's 5, and my son is now 7. But at the time they were 4 and 5. And we talked about like just ownership. And so I'm really thankful to your book for that.
Wow. I'm flat. I'm honored to hear that. And yeah, come tying back to financial literacy and also like freedom. Stress and mental health today, it's tied to what we do for a living. And one of the things in the Silicon Valley area, or even in finance, or even for most people, is we're in jobs that we hate. We're playing the corporate game, for example, and then you're dealing with management, you're dealing with all this stress. And freedom is important, at least to me. It's one of my main theses in life is being able to do what you want to do, when you want to do it, and also be able to express different sides of you that you couldn't express in these environments. And a good way to do that today is through ownership. And if we can teach our kids from young to express those parts of their mind and creativity, especially from young, then by the time they hit my age, 35, they're free. They're not stuck doing what they don't want to do. And another thing too is it's tough to be free financially if you're not a business owner or if you don't own a piece of a business. And that needs to be taught from young. And it's very similar. I had a similar vision. The storyline behind that book is actually in Carmel, because when I would go down to Carmel, I would just see the difference in people one of the things I'll say, like, I had a lot of confidence young because I got to be in the club promoting industry. Then my crew was also very, they were like, we had swag, we were very cocky. So I didn't have a problem going to the cool spots. I would go to downtown New York. I would go to Wall Street. I would go to LA. I went to the cool, even if I looked, a little crazy, like, I didn't have a problem doing it. But a lot of the kids, they put themselves in a box. And when I go to Carmel, you go to Pebble Beach and you see everybody, fancy cars and all these places. Then I would go see people from the community. I'm like, hey, why aren't you guys going to the cool spots? And it's something I actually found out on my show too, that classism and the way you grow up and also race kind of can move you in a different direction, and it can limit the way you view and the things that you go after.
That is so spot on, and it's so true. Like I see that so much, like where people like even in LA, where I spent the majority of my life in LA after college, and most people do not like venture out of their communities. Like, like my ex-husband at the time was from Compton, and he hadn't even been to certain beaches. And I'm like, you've lived in LA your whole life. How have you not been to the beach?
Yeah.
And I'm like you, like I'm grateful to my parents because they've like let us travel all different places. Like I'm able to move through any room, it doesn't matter. Any area, it doesn't matter, and I'm pretty adaptable in that way. But it's so true. Like I love what you said about just the freedom around entrepreneurship. And I think that's what I was looking for, like is in ownership, and talk to my kids about that. It got them dreaming, and it's a large reason why we started my daughter's e-commerce business, Harlan Rose LLC, which is her name. And so we started that because of your books. It really sparked that conversation, and I love that it gave me an opportunity to talk to them at that level, because it's not something that you talk to a 5-year-old about, so I'm really appreciative of that. Ali, I know you wanted to jump in.
Yeah.
Here.
Well, on the note of your book, if you saw me looking down, I was ordering your book for my daughter to read together just now. I knew about your other book, but I didn't know about the book for children. So we're going to get that and read it. So thank you. You talked about being in that scene and having confidence, but looking back, do you feel like it was real confidence? Did you feel like you had imposter syndrome, or you were faking it?
All the time.
Like an ego thing, right? Not an actual confidence.
Probably a little bit of both. Like exposure is important. So when you're exposed to people that are doing different things, and let's just say that they're pursuing what they want to go after, or confident people young, then you can take a little bit of that. I think a lot of it was ego, and I do even now suffer with imposter syndrome. Sometimes before I do my shows, I'm like, damn, I'm gonna talk to this person, and it's normal. And it's actually one of the things I look for. I feel like if I'm not reaching high enough, and if I'm not a little bit nervous, then maybe I'm not thinking big enough, and I'm in my comfort zone. So I'm always reaching for that. But I do think a lot of it was ego, and it's one of the things I work on dealing with today and not living in that zone. But I started developing confidence as I was getting wins. So as I started getting evidence that, for one, like if just because I was a bad student doesn't mean I'm going to be screwed. That you can, when you overcome a lot of obstacles and self-limiting beliefs that society puts on you, that the systems put on you, and it's actually like the work that you guys do, right? If you like therapists help people unpack these things, and if you're not exposed, going back to the exposure component, if you're not exposed to therapists, you're not exposed to confident people, you're not exposed to business people. Your only exposure is to people that you grew up with. And that was a game changer for me. Leaving my hometown, meeting new people, connecting with confident people, launching brands, doing my podcast, and not worrying about how I look, how I sound, how do you feel? So all those things kind of helped me out.
Yeah, I love that. That's so good. And something you said about like just doing, like and kind of getting, I call it getting those reps in, and getting those small wins. Like that's what really builds confidence over time. And when you step out of your comfort zone or your hometown or the people that you maybe grew up with, I always say like it allows you to dream in a way that you just weren't able to, so I love that. You have such an impressive career working for like tech giants like Techstars Venture Fund, Google, which is the mecca in hustle. Like, what was that like going from finance to tech? Like, I mean, that's like two different worlds.
It was a bit scary at first, right? Because it's two different kinds of people. The cool thing about technology from a mental health perspective is they tend to care more about it than Wall Street guys. Wall Street people, they're ruthless and it's cold. It's a very money hungry driven industry. Technology, they try to, there's work-life balance. People try to be friendly. Google has like the whole googly thing. They try to hire cool people who are nice. And that was a transition for me. Also, the quality of people in technology, they tend to think differently. So I saw people going into the office at 11 o'clock. That would never happen in Wall Street. Wall Street, you're in there 5 a.m. People having big visions, being able to shape industries, move fast. A lot. And here's the biggest thing too, I think for like a lot of listeners of your show is I was actually exposed to people very young, early 20s that had big dreams and they were bringing them to life. So I saw, founders of companies like the founders at Techstars who they're all from all different backgrounds, but they have hundreds of employees. They're building billion-dollar businesses that are helping people, changing people's lives. So that was just so cool for me to see. Versus in Wall Street, it was strictly about the money. They would tell me, focus on making money. Money solves everything. Out here, it was follow your passions, be creative, try to help people. Another thing too is work in a style that works for you. So what works for one person is not going to work for me. So there's also that customization around working style. And that was a huge, huge game changer for me. And that's when I was able to actually express a lot of the things I learned in Atlanta, like building an online brand, connecting with people, marketing, sales, new technology products, working with different kinds of people, and also connecting with different kinds of people. So that was another thing too.
Yeah, I love that you said that about tech because tech is so amazing to me. And it's a large reason why I went from video games and working in that cool space, which is probably the funnest time of my life. We'd be in there because once that date was released and they said the game was coming out on that date, that was the date. And so people had to get it done by any means necessary. So I saw that side where there wasn't a whole lot of work-life balance, because people would be sleeping at the studio. And shout out to Naughty Dog if you get anyone's listening from there. They are the most incredible crew there. But when I went over to tech, it was completely different, like you said, work-life balance, people kind of work in their own styles, doing their things. Like there's like 22-year-olds starting multi-million-dollar companies, like getting, VC funded, and just, it was amazing to me. It was amazing because I didn't graduate from college. And so I always kind of had that on my back, a little bit. Like I worked in a way that I'm like, I can't get fired. Like that was always my mentality. But what I loved about it is tech created a space for me because it was like, it welcomed me even without a degree. So I love that you said that. Can you share that transition though, from like working in those cool companies, like transitioning into entrepreneurship, like building your marketing agency, like after having such a tech career, like what made you make that shift and kind of bet on yourself? And what are some key kind of takeaways?
For me, it all happened naturally. So I didn't force anything. I live in a flow state. So I live very Zen, and it's one of my mantras now, just in line with nature. And a lot of the things in marketing and in business and in branding sort of happened organically. So for me on the marketing side, doing the podcast, doing the books, helping founders grow and scale companies organically, a lot of them have reached out over the years and saying, hey, do you consult? Will you help us with our ads? Will you help us with branding? Will you help us launch a show? And doing that has led to a lot of business for me. The second thing too is because of the marketing and the branding and being out there and connecting with people, it's also led to a lot of great partnerships. So I'm constantly getting reached out to by different engineers or even people from different industries. I have people from Morgan Stanley hitting me up and Goldman Sachs saying they want to start companies with me now because of the marketing, because of getting out there and connecting with people. So it's been a cool transition. It was very natural for me because the main reason why I moved to California was to get free and to do something on my own. So it just all kind of tied together.
I love that. I had to write that down, the flowing with nature. Like the flow state is so big for me too. Like I refuse to force anything. And if you know me, like I'm very much a flowy person. Like just I flow with mostly nature as well. So I love that you said that. I had to jot that one down. It's good.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, it's important. It's one of the main things I actually tell a lot of the young entrepreneurs that is the more you're relatable you are and doing things that you're passionate about, the better you're going to be able to do, the better you're going to be able to connect with people, the better your show is going to be. If you do it in a way that's inauthentic and fake, and this is another thing too for people looking to start companies or start brands, is you should, one, you're best able to help an old version of yourself. That's one of the things. So that's one way you can, find what you're passionate about. The second thing is when you're doing marketing, branding, or business is you want to make content as if you're speaking to one specific person. And if you're talking to one specific person. And when you're able to do that, you can connect and relate. And then you're in that flow state with your content where you're not overthinking it, when you're out of your own head and you're not being self-conscious.
Yeah, and I thank you for those pointers. And I love that you touch on authenticity. Demisha and I talked about from the beginning and as we go on that our podcast will succeed. And by succeed, mean touch others, touch ourselves. If we stay in that space of love or authenticity towards ourselves, towards each other, and towards others. And I just am so grateful that you touched on what that does for any type of business or any type of venture. And so on that note, as you ventured into building your marketing agency, what were the major challenges that you encountered and how did you successfully tackle and overcome them?
I would say it's on the mindset portion. So there comes a point when you have experience that you know the tactics, so you know how to build brands, you know the rules of the game, but there's a certain mindset it takes to do well in entrepreneurship when you have your back against the wall, you're not getting a check, you're doubting yourselves, you start getting the negative self-talk. What am I doing? I got to pay bills. And then when you're in that negative state, you're not able to get the best out of you. So for me, the main transition and the number one thing I'm constantly focused on is my mental health. What am I listening to? What state am I in? Am I in a negative state or am I in a positive state? Which is why I go to the gym. So I know it's a different direction than probably what you guys are thinking about, but for me, the mindset is what holds people back. It's once you're a specialist, and I think for a lot of people in companies, once you're really, really good at your job and you have domain expertise, the scariest thing to do is go out there and try to build a brand, try to connect with people, try to create something new. And most of the time, it's tied to confidence. Are you confident enough to go and deal with uncertainty? When you're in a big company, you're used to dealing with certainty, right? And when you're out there and you're connecting with people and tying it back to being authentic, one of the main things I struggled with, and sometimes I still struggle a little bit with it today, even though now, like, I can't force being fake. I have to be myself. So if I'm like in a meeting or I'm dealing with a client, I have to do it in a way that's authentic to me. You're able to connect with people in a different way, and people send you referrals. You're able to grow, and then it leads you to have solutions for the problems of different companies, brands, people, CEOs, etc. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, and you are the ideal person for us to be interviewing and for others to hear the message, because this is all we're about, is taking care of our mind, body, soul, fueling up so that we can be our purpose and help serve the greater good for others. So I know you said, oh, I'm not sure if this is the direction that you were expecting, but it's the direction that I'm not surprised to be hearing from you with the level of success that you've had. With over 10 years of experience in advertising and the technology industry. I know that you've already touched on some of your techniques, but what advice do you have for brands and companies looking to grow through marketing and business development?
Ooh, good question. Tying back to authenticity is who is your ideal customer profile? So who are you servicing? You want to be the best at servicing them. So business is really like, to me, it's a spiritual game. Can you do more for your market than anybody else out there? Can you do more for your target customer than anybody else out there? Once you have the service part down, then the marketing comes in, right? Once you have the targeting down, can you create a compelling offer for this target demographic that's better than anybody else? How are you going to communicate to them in an authentic way that's going to solve their problem? So it ties back to authenticity. So many brands, so many entrepreneurs, so many tech founders, so many business people, the more you focus on you, the worse you do. The more you focus on other people, the better you do. And so that's number one, is get obsessed about your target customer. Get obsessed with servicing them better than anybody else. Second is from like a marketing perspective, it kind of ties back to what we were saying about making content, advertising channels, your podcasts, your messaging, your books, as if you're doing it for one particular person. Then find more people like that person out there. Because what you're going to notice is there are hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of people just like that target customer. And then you build marketing around them. So are they on YouTube? Do they listen to podcasts? What kind of podcasts do they listen to? Okay, great. What kind of problems do they have? Do they have mindset problems? Do they have self-limiting beliefs? Are they overthinkers? Are they very so all these things, right? And then you create messaging around that. And that's what the best brands are able to do. The best brands and the best companies, and in my experience, people who grow, is you service a community better than anybody else out there. And then you build strong marketing around it and you build relationships with people. There's another thing too, is don't be transactional, be relationship based.
Yeah, good suggestion there. Love that.
Yeah, that's so good. I was just taking all kinds of notes because I'm running a few businesses and just learning as I go. But I love the almost like niching down on one customer, as opposed to like I was doing it completely opposite, like doing more of a audience, like but a smaller audience. And so I love like the simplicity of the one person profile, because that just allows you to really like focus on that particular person and serve that person well, which will then serve others like them. Love that. Is like Jim. Love that. So you have an incredible podcast, which I listen to weekly. Love all of the different folks that you have on there. But how did you come up with the idea for the Pedro Frias Show podcast? And what inspired you to bring on peak performers from various industries?
I'm again servicing myself. I listen to a lot of podcasts. So for me, I had to build myself up to grow into each different level. And with that, I became obsessed with podcasts. I listen to every day. I'm listening to podcasts. I'm like, okay, what's going on in my brain now? And then I've listened to a podcast to fix that. So if I'm having a rough day, or I'm having, let's just say like most recently, or like last year, I got, I had a beautiful place in downtown San Francisco, missed my view. I had the Salesforce Tower. I was up there and I had to find a solution for me being pissed and not wanting to go in that property management office and cuss them all out. So I'm like, what kind of podcast can I listen to? So that was, and that's kind of been the formation of it. The second thing too is I've hit a point where I get a lot of entrepreneurs and different people wanting to reach out. And I sometimes am so busy that I would like to, but I'm like, there's only one me. So that's why I disappear to nature a lot. And the show helps. And I'm probably breaking a lot of my own rules with not going very narrow. I have a lot of people from different industries. So I do mental health, I've done relationships, I do business, I do branding, but it helps me connect with a whole bunch of different kinds of communities. So I have a PGA Tour guy that can come on. He's coming on, like we have a episode for next week. And then I can have a Navy SEAL who's like a yoga guru author on the show and talk about, spirituality, following your passions, doing things from a good, all these different topics. So it helps me because I feel like I get free coaching every time I'm on a show. But secondly, it helps people. And each show, before I do a show, if I'm doing a show on relationships for women, I don't know anything about relationships for women, but I'm curious about it because I've had a lot of bad relationships. And a lot of my exes say, you needed therapy. And I was like, I'm not going to no therapist, no matter what. So I got, a lot of relationship coaches for women on it. And then now, whenever I release those episodes, I get a bunch of guys saying, oh, and they're mad about what, the female therapist said. So, okay, cool. Let me get it from a guy's perspective. And so that allows me to connect with people in a lot of different ways. And secondly, going back to building relationships, is media is a great way to build relationships with people because you can connect with them emotionally in a different way. And they trust you more because when I'm asking questions, I'm thinking about, hey, what is this? Let's just say this girl from the Bay, she's had a lot of bad relationships. She's been reaching out to me on Instagram saying, yeah, every time I post something about that. So I'm like, let me frame my questions if I was her. And then that opens up new opportunities for me. So hopefully that answers you. I know I went to a lot of different areas there, but
Oh,
to
that's
make a
great.
long story short, it allows me to play in a lot of different areas. It allows me to build relationships with leaders of different industries. And then secondly, I can just connect with people in a very different way. I think everybody should do a podcast.
Oh,
Everybody should do a podcast.
oh yeah, it's been a game changer. Even for us, I think we're 12 episodes recorded in so far. And so,
Keep going. Keep
oh no,
going.
we already have like I think 20 people booked up. So it is such a game changer just from the relationship standpoint, like you said, the free coaching which comes out of it.
Oh,
And
yeah.
even though you have different guests from different backgrounds, walks of life, they're all entrepreneurs. So that's kind of where the niche down comes in. So you kind of said like, oh, they're different, but that's the niche is entrepreneurship. And so like even you had Carissa on there, who I now follow. She's awesome, a dating coach. Pedro kind of mentioned, I'll just say this for folks who don't know, but he mentioned having his view, and he was actually in that tower in San Francisco that flooded. And so he was kind of displaced last year from his home. So like,
Yeah.
I couldn't even imagine that, by the way. Like,
It was stressful. Yeah. I made the most out of it. But, the main thing is, as life goes on, problems don't stop. And that's
mhm.
something listeners should know. So it doesn't matter. At each stage of your life, you're going to have new problems. You're going to get a great marriage, then something else happens. You're going to have this. And then podcasts, media, and connecting with, we get access to people now through social media that you couldn't get back in the day. And that's been such a game changer, especially as I'm doing these shows and connecting with people like you guys. I can connect with world-class people and then get free coaching because I'm naturally curious because I'm trying to learn. I'm trying to make sure I don't do anything crazy myself because I will get back to the old Boston me and, go crazy. So
Oh, I love that. And Ali and I always say we're both teachers and students. And I'm a lifelong learner. So I love that you mentioned that. On your show, you've had, I mean, I'm telling you, you guys got to listen to this podcast because he has just incredible guests on. But like, do you have a memorable conversation that you had on your podcast? I mean, there's so many great ones, but one that kind of stuck out and really helped you.
ooh. So I'll say this in the beginning. So my first, probably, the first guest I had on, and I was actually nervous doing the interview, was with Mark Divine.
Yeah.
And he was like a Navy SEAL commander, and he's written a lot of books, Way of the Wolf, and he's a big mental guru. And it was just, the conversation went completely, I thought he was going to be a hard-nosed Navy SEAL. So I was like, yeah. And this guy's like a yoga master. And I'm like, what the hell? And the insights and the depth and the types, his story, he's a great storyteller, but also what he was big on, listening to your inner guru, like the voice that we get. And a lot of us just mass from outside society and the rules. And this man, when you hear a story, he was similar to mine. He was in the corporate world, then had like a traumatic upbringing.
Mhm.
And then it led him to leave everything behind and recreate himself. And I feel like I've had to recreate myself over and over and over and over again. And I'm constantly doing it. And after that conversation I had with him, even though I was nervous as hell doing the podcast, because if you listen to my old shows, guys, they were not really, they were bad. I mean, in my point of view, in the beginning when I was learning, and that's the thing, I'm okay putting myself out there. I'm okay falling on my face and looking like a fool. So that helps me out. But I didn't even go back to listen to the ones I did way back. From 2011, I didn't even listen to those because I'm like, damn. And doing it with him, and even though I was nervous, I heard like what a world-class podcaster can do, like Navy SEAL commander guy, but the level of depth and connection and emotional openness that this dude had was the opposite of what I was expecting. I thought he was going to be just a badass Navy SEAL guy, and we were going to talk about being tough. And I was like, yeah. And I was going to make that podcast for the bros, but it went in a totally different direction.
I love that. And that was such I mean, like I said, all your guests are just so surprisingly incredible, but I do remember that podcast, and I was shocked by that as well. So thank you so much for sharing.
Oh, you're welcome.
And I feel really inspired by just your podcast journey because, and Demisha and I are in a similar boat where we just are putting ourselves out there. We'd rather just do and learn rather than plan. And, and then just kind of, I'm excited to actually look back at old podcasts someday and just smile, knowing where we started, where we came, and then just be so proud of our, former selves for just getting going. So building an online brand with over 25,000 followers worldwide is impressive. What strategies do you use to grow and engage audiences on social media? I imagine that each platform requires a unique approach to effectively connect with your followers.
Being authentic. So narrowing down who you're reaching out to, how can you connect with them in an authentic way, and do it for that channel. So the way you're going to reach out, the long form content for podcasts are going to be very different than Instagram. Instagram, you want to get attention. Instagram is basically, you need a billboard. Billboard can be how you look. It can be a look. It could be a swag. It could be nature. That's going to get their attention. And then the content is the meat, right? That's the hook. But you need to get people's attention, and you have to do it for different platforms. For me, I do everything again back in the Zen state, the flow state. It's all natural. So I try to connect with people on the platforms organically. When I do content, whether it's, for agencies or for various types of businesses that I'm involved with, I try to be as authentic to the community as possible and build relationships with the communities using digital platforms versus trying to make money on the digital platforms initially, right? Because I think what happens with people is we tend to want results very quickly. When we do that, we force things. And if you need to make money, like, you may use Instagram very differently than somebody's trying to build a relationship. But relationships lead to money, not the other way around.
Yeah. And it must be such a fine line that you have to walk, because social media platforms aren't known for authenticity, right? I tell my clients, don't compare your insides to someone else's highlight reel, right?
Ooh.
There's not a lot of authenticity going on social media. So for you to share that authenticity is the key, and to be able to do so on these platforms while still advertising, marketing, etc. That's pretty impressive.
I think it's the most important thing, because social media has gotten so noisy now, and everybody's mental health is in the gutter. This is one thing I'm learning from being on social media is everybody is having mental health challenges. Everybody's having relationship issues. Everybody's having comparison issues, and you're comparing yourself to somebody's highlight reel.
So true. It's so true. And I think one thing I was saying with one of my clients is I'm a coach. I don't know if you know that, but I was saying they were really stuck in the comparison. Like, they're like, I can't even go on social media. I can't even spend, time on there. Like, I just look at my life and I hate it. And I said, well, a lot of times you're comparing your chapter 1 to people's chapter 20, and they're only showing you the best version. I'm like, I have seen people take hundreds of photos to get one photo.
Yeah.
I'm like, so you're looking at that one great photo, not the 100, sucky photos,
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's so true. Like, I love that you said the authenticity. Like, I try and lead with that in everything that I do. Like, I kind of put myself out there in a way that, I'm like, probably people are like, that's a lot of information, but I'm like, whatever, but it has been really helpful. And I think it's allowed me to connect with people in a way that I hadn't connected with before. So Such a great gym. As someone who wears like so many hats and just does so many things for others, you're an entrepreneur, you're an investor, you're a podcast host, marketing agency, all this stuff. Like, I'm curious, besides kind of going into nature, which you've already shared, like, what are some practices and routines like that you do to kind of keep yourself energized and thriving? And how do you fuel your soul? It's our question we ask everybody.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Thanks.
I fuel my soul, and here's something that I've had to develop and through podcasts is number one is I've eliminated everything of my life that causes me friction or stress. I've gotten rid of it. So whether it's a person, whether it's a job, I'm a big fan of removing so you can add. So that's number one. So my soul naturally is in line because I'm in alignment with who I think I'm supposed to be, and that my actions follow that. So I think that's number one. Number two is, I think for this portion of my career is I've transitioning from just chasing money to chasing contribution, because life is short, right? And now I'm 35 and I'm not old, but like I'm not 25 anymore. And so things have changed a little bit for me. And then I've also learned what I like and what I don't like. And that has helped me, again, remove triggers, and triggers can be a job, triggers can be a relationship, anything that is going to cause me not to like feel that fire, I do not do. So I only lean into that. And that has been the biggest, even if there's money there, because I get offered stuff for money, I just don't do it. I'm like, no, it's just not for me. If it's not for me, it's not for me. And I'm not looking at it and I don't look back. I used to. Yeah. Second thing is vulnerability. So every day I try to do something that's outside of, I like my routine. I like, I'm in the gym and I make these routines over and over and over again. And I reward myself when I'm vulnerable. So to learn how to do a podcast, I was going on stage for Toastmasters and just talking about random stuff. Again, and then I would reward myself after. So every day I try to do something that's a little bit outside my routine, a little bit outside my comfort zone, and then I reward myself after. The third thing is practicing positive self-talk. So this ties back into going after what you want, doing a show, going back and listening to your podcast. Is people beat themselves up about everything, and that eats away at your soul. And a lot of times it's things that you learn from upbringing. You get all these junk that society puts on you, that it maybe happened in school, maybe happens in the workplace, and you're suppressing all this crap inside you. I suppress nothing. I let it out. If I feel a certain way, I have to express it. And a lot of guys have trouble with that. And I've learned it's not good. I was like that for years. I used to keep everything aside. I'm going to say this on the show. Maybe it's not good, but I used to try to man up. A lot of guys try to do that. And this guys die younger because of that and have heart conditions because we hold all this and it just eats away at your soul. So when you're in alignment, I think this is the main thing I'll end with is find alignment. Find people that feed your soul and remove people, situations, work, thoughts, throw them away. And that's what's helped me. It's helped me live free, helps me express myself and show I don't beat myself up about anything. I'm my own biggest fan. We were talking about ego versus confidence. Now I'm chill. I can go do this. I would not have done the show maybe 5 years ago because my beard isn't all lined up sharp. And before I'm like, I'm known for swag, right? But now I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go on. I go on to shows on purpose looking like crap just so I can say, I still got it. It doesn't matter. And then, and then when I have my swag, I'll come back and I'll be back in the ego. No, I'm just kidding. But
I love that.
It's the biggest thing is if you want to feed your soul, I think people need to learn how to become their own biggest fans, eliminate things, relationships, people, thoughts, careers that eat away at you.
Yeah.
And then when you do that, you're going to have a lot more success.
No, it's so true. I mean, that you dropped some serious gems and I love how you narrowed it down to alignment within you, it's like, and being your biggest fan, like I think that's something people struggle with because everyone's taught, to be humble, which is a beautiful trait to possess, but you also want to have the level of, like being your fan and just looking at your wins and celebrating yourself. So I love that. And the auditing of your life is so huge. I did that last year and it was the greatest gift that I gave to myself. I hadn't done it. I'm great at auditing like things, like I have no attachment to things. And I say like I attach quickly, but I also detach quickly too. Like, and that's a gift I gave myself, with relationships, like, I love and then I release in love. And that has been such a gift, like I love the auditing. The auditing component is so huge. And I think a lot of people don't give themselves permission to do that because maybe it's like a family relationship, or they've been friends with someone for 20 years, and if someone is doing you a disservice and they're not kind of, supporting or helping the greater version of who you're trying to become, like you're just doing yourself a disservice.
Yeah. And I like the part where you brought up expressing everything.
Yeah. So
right.
good.
Many of us think of to like a confrontation as a conflict, but confront is to actually address the situation head on, right? And I've experienced people, what the younger people call ghosting. People have ghosted me rather than communicating with me, which could have allowed the bond to strengthen. And I have confronted people who have not liked what I had to say. And I'm a big believer in confronting and expressing. And sometimes we get so discouraged because of the reactions from others. And so it's so key that we continue to listen to ourselves and let those feelings out. We need to say it. We have, what is it? Say what you mean what you say, but don't say it mean.
Right.
Like what we teach our kids in kindergarten, but get it out there, because guess what? If it stays inside, we get sick.
Yep.
Right. And we prevent ourselves from the opportunity to connect with ourselves, to be authentic. And so, yeah, I really like that. I think that is such an incredible takeaway, as was so many of the other soul fueling tips and techniques that you're using. On that note of soul fueling, I see that you take frequent visits to Tahoe. My family also has a place up there in Tahoe. My grandpa, he's built 2 homes in Tahoe with a beautiful view of the lake, and I've spent my entire life up there. Do you find yourself drawn to Tahoe for specific activities or specific reasons?
Good question. So it ties back into the self-care. I mean, I'll say this on your show. I was so unhealthy for such a long time mentally for the reasons that we were talking about. I've always been authentic, but expressing myself, I struggle with that. I want to keep everything inside. And it ties to Tahoe and because nature somewhat allowed me to see things that I didn't see. So I have like a rental place in Truckee, and I'm also in the Bay. So Truckee's a cool area too. And there's a lot of technology people. It's great for business because, like going back, most people up there don't look like me. So I'm different. So when I go there, I stick out. People like to talk to me. They're like, who are you? What do you do? And I'm like, hey, man. So I can connect with people in a different way, but also from like a mental health perspective, it's setting that quiet time to reflect, to self-assess. What's going on in your brain? What are you thinking about this week? And for me, getting away from the craziness, it helps me get into alignment and detach. Demisha, you said detachment earlier. So detachment is super important, especially if you're an entrepreneur or if whatever you're doing, you need to detach. You have to take a top-down view and look strategically. And there's something that I always tell entrepreneurs is you got to spend the day not working in your business. You got to work on your business. So get out of your business and see what you're doing from a top-down point of view. Because a lot of times we're just stuck in doing, and you could run down a hole and next you're going the wrong way. So you have to set time every week to work on your business, not in your business.
Yeah. Thank you for that pointer. I love the idea of detaching from everything else. And then that allows us to reattach to the self and to that authenticity that you talked about. Pedro, what are some of your future plans and goals, both for your podcast and your career in general?
For the show, so I'm going to continue growing. I'm always going to do a podcast. Like I'm never going to stop doing it. I'm going heavy into YouTube soon. We're going to have, this comes back to being a perfectionist where I want it to look like swag. I want it to look like a music video. And sometimes that prevents me from doing stuff. It's something I work on. So I'm going to continue to grow my personal brand. I'm going to continue to take on and grow projects. I was recently in a real estate project. I'm getting pulled into a lot of different marketing initiatives, people looking to start companies. So I'm assessing and taking things slowly when it comes to long-term company building. But with my own brands, I'm going to continue to grow them. I want to continue to connect with people. I never thought I would be having conversations like this, for example. I never thought I'd be anywhere near anything soulful or mental health related. That's like a new evolution too. So yeah, for me, it's again, just living in that authenticity and freedom and chasing things that serve me and serve my soul. And also where I can make money doing it. I think money is important, but yeah, for me, it's freedom. I want to live my life free. And that's what I chase every day. If I were to die today, am I dying all in? Am I doing what I want to do? And I actively think that's the main thing I think about. I'm like, okay, if I drop dead today, and this comes back to my uncle, my mentor. So this is where I learned this from. My uncle dropped dead, my mentor, and we had a falling out before he died. Mm-hmm. And we had a falling out about money. And I'll make a long story short, because I know we're running on time on the show, but my uncle was one of the ones who helped me build confidence because I had exposure to high level business people at a time where my self-worth was like, I kind of thought myself as a street guy. And my uncle was taking me to different places. And basically, he had a divorce and he would hit a rough patch in his life, even financially. He was one of the people who got wiped out in 2008, over levered in real estate. And he was doing business with the NFL player, and they needed money for a project. I lent him money. To make a long story short, it was supposed to be a week and it turned to 7 months. My uncle and I relationship went bad. The day I cashed the check, when I finally got it, my uncle dropped dead. And that was a transformative moment for me. And it made me actively assess, because then I lost 2 aunts to cancer. I lost my grandfather. So I started to realize we're not here forever. So an active mantra I'm constantly thinking about is, if I were to get sick and I were to die, did I live all in today? And it's always, I'm always thinking about it. Sometimes I'm like, oh, I overthink doing something. Like, dude, you might even fucking be here tomorrow. Just do it. Try to swear. So that's how I live my life.
Wow, I love that. All in. And just your experiences helped you to remember what really matters. I tell clients, zoom in, zoom out, to be able to get perspective. And it looks like you've been able to really gather that perspective. Thank you so much for sharing about authenticity, excuse me, vulnerability, and to be expressive. And good luck to you on all your future or current and future ventures. I know that whatever you touch is going to be amazing, because you're going to do it being authentically you.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Like I'm like, just the gems that are coming out of this is like so powerful for me. I love that, just everything that the way that you think, is so amazing. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs don't think like that. So I know you're going to inspire so many people. So I just appreciate all the gems that you shared. I have a favorite quote, and you reminded me when you said like it all in, but one of my favorite quotes is by Irma Bombeck, and she's a writer, and actually from Arizona, surprisingly. I live in Arizona too, but I guess that's why I love her so much. But she has this quote that says, when I get to the end of my life, and I'm standing before God, I would hope that I wouldn't have a single bit of talent left in me. So I can say to him, I use everything you gave me. And I just love that quote, because, and that's how I live my life, like, I'm like, I want to use every gift, because all of this comes from our higher power, however however you label them. I label mine God. And I just believe that we should use everything in us. So love that you all in.
Thanks for having me on. It's been a lot of fun, and yeah, to me, that's the main takeaway. If the way I live my life is very similar to both of you, it seems I do things that feed me, and if it doesn't feed me, I'm not doing it.
Yeah,
It doesn't matter the money. I'm just not doing it.
I
And
love
that's
it.
that's the way I like to live.
Yeah. Now, before you hop off, I've seen that you've shared some books on social media. Are there any kind of books that you can share or podcasts? I know you love podcasts that have been really significant, like in your life and kind of supported you along your journey that you would recommend for the viewers?
Yeah. Okay. So I'll do Mark Divine show is pretty good. I'll say Tony Robbins at
Mm,
times can be good. He's big into spirituality type of stuff. Ed Milet show, I like his show. Um, who else? As far as books, I think guys should read. Actually, everybody should read. Maybe Ego is the Enemy. I think a lot of people live in their ego, and it prevents them from being vulnerable
mm,
and taking risks. I think people need to take more risks, and I think that it ties back into ego because you're scared to look like a fool in front of people because you care what everybody else thinks about you versus what you think about yourself, and I think that's your ego. So I think that's a solid book. And then Mark Divine has Way of the Wolf. I like that book. And then who else? Yeah, those are the main ones that kind of stick out to me. As far as business, there's a ton of business books out there that people could get into. And anything Ray Dalio is really good. Tim Ferriss' Tribe of Mentors is really good. I like to read more mindset things than how-to things.
Yep.
Because I think once you have the mindset, you can figure out the how-to, and your how-to may be different than what's out there. I'm a big fan of looking at books. Like if you want to learn one skill, let's say you want to learn marketing, great. Just get that book on social media marketing, but focus on the mindset. Because once you have the right mindset, it unlocks the answers to everything else. So that's my recommendation for people.
I love it. Thank you so much. This was just amazing. You fueled my soul today, and I know that the viewers are going to learn so much from this. So we really appreciate you coming on. You've been an incredible guest, and we'd love to have you on again after you write your third book.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me on. Best of luck with the show. Obviously, it's blowing up, so you guys don't need it, but I'm honored to be here, and I wish you both the absolute best today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pedro.